remain the same, so that we will not have further. But to our surprise, and I don't know how they can justify that, because it's quite surprising and it defies basic logic that you're having level of this inflation, then you are still increasing the NPR. So you want to kill growth because you want to reduce inflation. But in the long run, you're supposed to balance the two, so that at least you can now give people a breathing space in terms of business people to actually work things out. And that's why we are seeing this result we are seeing keep going higher. Even the temporary reduction in inflation was quite temporary because of farm produce. I'm sure it will go back in the next outcome by NBS.
You did say it was a surprise to you,
right?
Talking about the increase in the NPR.
Yes.
May I ask why that was surprising?
Right, it's quite surprising because looking at the economy, from the exception of Yemi Cardoso, he has continued to actually increase, and you could see from the analysis of Daily Trust as well that it has been increased by 850 basis points. So by the time you do it for 5 months, and you see that it's not actually helping the economy, so you have tarry, not even reducing it. Stay there and see how things actually work. But to our surprise, you are sacrificing. That's why I said you are approaching hawkish approach to solve the economy, which is quite a surprise. So you have to study the economy. What's the major factor? And just like the same thing we are seeing now, we are seeing more expenditure because you are now doing a temporary and interventional approach to solve major problems that are structural in nature. So if you are doing that, it will continue to happen, and that's why we see continuous inflation. So with this report we are seeing now, that means we are still going back. We are eroding the gain we achieved for 2 months consecutively, and we're going back to another level of inflation.
But let me ask you, you've spoken regarding the hawkish approach by the CBN. Quite drastic measures, have been taken so far. And some on one hand would say, that those, or applaud the efforts of the CBN. And some on the other hand would say, you increase, you watch, you pause for a while before you increase again, like you rightly stated. But how then can the CBN approach it in a manner where they do not, stop growth on one hand just because they're tackling inflation? Because it seems as though everything else has been put on pause just to tackle inflation specifically.
Right. When there is increase in NPR, it brings a serious problem. And what the serious problem is that, as we know that about 85% of Nigerian businesses are MSME, and most of them need money, they need liquidity to actually do their business. And where do they get this business from? The money from is from banks or other approaches to actually get money, but which revolve back to bank loan. Then also, manufacturing sector also need more money, because even now we are talking about import substitution, we're talking about backward integration. So how do you achieve that? Now most companies are leaving Nigeria. Ordinarily, as they are leaving, it should be an opportunity for other indigenous
smaller
companies,
businesses
to take over such issues. Let me take you to pharmaceutical. If you buy a particular medicine at 2,000 naira before GSK left, now it's about 10,000 plus. So that would be an advantage for a small an indigenous company to take over. But when the indigenous company cannot even access funds to do their businesses, and that's why you go to other economies, their country are very intentional by creating enabling environment, infrastructure, and fund for them to actually do the business. But in our case, we are killing those industry the more by increasing our NPR. I don't know why we continue this trajectory, and that's why people like me, it defies my own logic that how can you increase more when you're expected to hold on, you observe it for 3 months, then you now review again, but you just continue, you keep tightening the economy, having a contrast approach, sacrificing the growth. And the growth is what will have a multiplier effect on people's pocket in the long run. Because how many people are you actually solving? You may think it's just for people that are collecting loan, but the loan will have make an expansionary of the economy itself. So it's quite saddening that we're having this approach. But going forward again, I think by the time we see the next NBS report on inflation, maybe that would have showed them signal that the temporary reduced inflation that you've seen is function of farm produce like tomato, like yam, and we are going to also suffer in the long run, because look at the flood we are having now. That flood is a factor that we need to consider too, because it's going to show in the long run, maybe next 2-3 months, because people are supposed to harvest some produce at that period. And that's why I said they are sacrificing growth because they want to reduce inflation at all costs.
But let me, in the defense of the CBN,
right,
looking at the broader picture, inflation is a major challenge. You know, reducing the value of the naira, reducing, you know, the cost of, I should say, the standard amounts, that is minimum wage now. The value of minimum wage drastically has dropped, which is an after effect of inflation, you're trickling down to the naira itself, that is the Nigerian currency. But would you say the efforts of the CBN are totally or have totally not yielded any results so far?
Right. On a basic analysis, they may think they are, but there are some factors. As I say, it is quite structural. Now, you are saying there is more money in circulation. But I can tell you, as a business person, as people on the street, there is no money in people's pockets.
So it's back to government spending.
Exactly.